Den I swum to the stern of it and took a holt. It clouded up and was putty dark for a little while, so I clum up and laid down on the planks. De men is all way yonder in the middle where the lantern was. The river was a-risin', and dey was a good current, and I reckon that by 4 in the mornin' I'd be 25 mile down the river, and den I'd slip in just 'fore daylight and swim ashore, and take to the woods on the Illinois side. But I didn't have no luck. When we was most down to the head of the island, a man begins to come aft with the lantern, and I see it wa'n't no use fer to wait, so I slid overboard and struck out for the island. Well, I had a notion I could land most anywheres, but I couldn't, bank too bluff, and I was most to the foot of the island before I found a good place. I went into the woods, and judged I wouldn't fool with rafts no more, long as they moved the lantern round so. I had my pipe and a plug of dog leg, and some matches in my cap, and they warn't wet, so I was all right. And so you ain't had no meat nor bread to eat all this time? Why didn't you get mud turkles? How you gwine to git 'em? You can't slip up on 'em and grab 'em. And how's a body goin' to git 'em with a rock? How could a body do it in the night? And I warn't gwine to show myself on the bank in the daytime. Well, that's so. You've had to keep in the woods all the time, of course. Did you hear 'em shootin' the cannon? Oh, yes. I knowed they was arter you. I see 'em go by here. Watched 'em through the bushes. Some young birds come along, flyin' a yard or two at a time and lighting. Jim said it was a sign it was going to rain. He said it was a sign when young chickens flew that way, and so he reckoned it was the same way when young birds done it. I was going to catch some of them, but Jim wouldn't let me. He said it was death. He said his father laid mighty sick once, and some of them catched a bird, and his old granny said his father would die, and he did. And Jim said you mustn't count the things you're going to cook for dinner, because that would bring bad luck. The same if you shook the tablecloth after sundown. And he said that if a man owned a beehive and that man died, the bees must be told about it before sunup next morning, or else the bees would all weaken down and quit work and die. Jim said bees wouldn't sting idiots, but I didn't believe that, because I had tried them lots of times myself, and they wouldn't sting me. I had heard about some of these things before, but not all of them. Jim knowed all kinds of signs. He said he knowed most everything. I said it looked to me like all the signs was about bad luck, and so I asked him if there weren't any good luck signs. He says, "Mighty few, and dey ain't no use to a body. What you want to know when good luck's a-comin' for? Want to keep it off?" And he said, "If you's got hairy arms and a hairy breast, it's a sign that you's a-gwine to be rich. Well, there's some use in a sign like that, 'cause it's so fur ahead. You see, maybe you's got to be poor a long time first, and so you might get discouraged and kill yourself if you didn't know by the sign that you gwine to be rich by and by." Have you got hairy arms and a hairy breast, Jim? What's the use to ask that question? Don't you see I has? Well, are you rich? No, but I been rich onct, and gwine to be rich again. Onct I had $14, but I took to speculatin' and got busted out. What did you speculate in, Jim? Well, first I tackled stock. What kind of stock? Why, livestock, cattle, you know. I put $10 in a cow. But I ain't gwine to risk no more money in stock. The cow up and died on my hands. So you lost the $10? No, I didn't lose it all. I only lost about 9 of it. I sold a hide and taller for $1.10. You had $5.10 left. Did you speculate any more? Yes. You know that one-legged nigger that belongs to old Mr. Bradish? Well, he sot up a bank, and say anybody that put in $1 would get $4 more at the end of the year. Well, all the niggers went in, but they didn't have much. I was the only one that had much. So I stuck out for more than $4, and I said if I didn't get it I'd start a bank myself. Well, of course that nigger want to keep me out of the business, because he says there wa'n't business enough for 2 banks. So he say I could put in my $5 and he pay me $35 at the end of the year. So I done it. Then I reckoned I'd invest the $35 right off and keep things a-movin'. There was a nigger named Bob that'd ketched a wood flat, and his marster didn't know it, and I bought it off'n him and told him to take the $35 when the end of the year come. But somebody stole the wood flat that night, and next day the one-legged nigger say the bank's busted. So they didn't none of us get no money.
What did you do with the 10 cents, Jim?
Well, I was going to spend it, but I had a dream, and the dream told me to give it to a nigger named Balaam. Balaam's ass, they call him for short. He's one of dem chuckleheads, you know. But he's lucky, they say, and I see I warn't lucky. The dream say let Balaam invest the 10 cents and he'd make a raise for me. Well, Balaam he took the money, and when he was in church he heard the preacher say that whoever give to the poor lent to the Lord, and bound to get his money back 100 times. So Balaam he took and give the 10 cents to the poor, and laid low to see what was going to come of it.
Well, what did come of it, Jim?
Nothin' never come of it. I couldn't manage to collect that money no way, and Balaam he couldn't. I ain't going to lend no more money doubt I see the security. Bound to get your money back 100 times, the preacher says. If I could get the 10 cents back, I'd call it square, and be glad of the chance.
Well, it's all right anyway, Jim, long as you're going to be rich again sometime or other.
Yes, and I's rich now, come to look at it. I owns myself, and I's worth $800. I wished I had the money. I wouldn't want no more. End of chapter.